I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. My title today is Toxic Mechulinity, When Mechanics Gas Women. And I will be reading this from an ongoing account that I kept as these things were happening. So this will all be at thirdparadigm.substack.com. Let's get started. My ex has retired, and good dad that he is, wanted to make sure our youngest daughter had a car that was safe. Cassandra is driving a 2008 Prius that was bought new by his sister, bought from her by me, given to the middle daughter, inherited by the oldest when the middle moved to New York, and now is Cassandra's. 5 women owners over its lifetime of 18 years. Since he doesn't live in the same place, my ex made an appointment with her to take it in for a tune-up to a shop recommended by the middle daughter's boyfriend, called Cass Street Automotive. The friendly owner answered and assured him he'd do the same for his daughter. It turns out he also owns Mission Hill Automotive, where Cassandra took another inherited car when she first moved to San Diego. That car was sold for scrap soon after they did a pricey fix, but we figured it was its time to go and there was no relationship. Although everything was working fine, my ex wanted to make sure the brakes were good. The owner gave him a quote of $800 for front brake pads, rotors, and flushing the brake fluid, plus $1,900 on the axles, boots, and ball joints that he said needed replaced. My ex approved it. Cassandra picked it up the same day, feeling good. And then, on the drive home, she noticed an intermittent sound she'd never heard before. And so our saga begins. The Shady Jade. For 2 weeks, Cassandra hoped it would go away. Maybe something needed to settle. Maybe it wasn't dangerous, although brakes and axles both seem like things you don't want to chance. She works 8 to 5 weekdays, which is the only time they're open. It's an ordeal. When her sister Veronica visited, Cassandra took the Friday off and called to see if they could look at the car that day. They said no, and she hung up. Veronica convinced her to just go there and talk to someone in person. Veronica is a bereavement counselor and good at warming people up. She pet the little dog, explained that the sound hadn't shown up until they did the work, and how hard it is to bring the car in during work hours. Nothing. No apology, no concern, no acknowledgement. Bring the car on Monday and they'd look at it. Jade, the red-headed manager, is so off-putting and cold that their theory is he's on the spectrum. A strange choice for customer service, but oh well. I don't make guarantees. On Monday, Cassandra drops it off and walks the half hour to work. Towards the end of the day, Jade calls her and says the axle shaft assemblies they installed had failed. Sometimes that happens, he says. You get a defective part. He had the new ones, but they were finishing work for other customers and wouldn't get to it today. No apology, no responsibility, no prioritizing a problem they had caused. Discouraged, Cassandra asks if she can pick it up to drive home and drop it off the next day, since she's already been driving it for 2 weeks. He says, I wouldn't recommend it. Will it be done tomorrow? She asks. He answers, I don't make guarantees, and hangs up. So either she's making a big deal out of nothing and they can't be bothered, or the broken part they installed makes it too dangerous to drive, and she's been risking her life for the last 2 weeks. Or he's just being malicious in not letting her drive, which seems entirely in character. Cassandra pays $60 in Lyft rides in commuter traffic across town for home and back. The smirking leprechaun. Late in the afternoon, Jade calls and says the car's ready, but warns that he leaves right at 5. If she's a minute late, he'll be gone and she'll have to come the next day. Frantic, At 4:40, Cassandra gets a ride from her coworker, a 42-year-old Muslim woman from Kenya. As they drive up at 4:50, Cassandra leaps out of the car. Jade is crossing the street and gives her a little wave and a smirk. She thinks he's leaving early just to spite her. He crosses back and says he was just giving someone else their keys. Cassandra is so angry with his demeaning attitude, she's shaking. He gives her the key, but no paperwork on what they did. She asks if there's a way to reach the owner through the email, but he says that goes to everyone. He says, "Why do you want to talk to him?" And not wanting to say about you, she says, "I feel there should be some consideration for work that wasn't done right." He says, "But we fixed it, so why would we give you any refund?" She leaves. The saga slogs on. As you've already surmised, the saga continues. The intermittent clicking and whirring seems to be getting worse. 2 different days on the same hill, the brakes catch and then give, lurching the car forward, then catch again. Her commute involves several roundabouts, and it feels like it's going out of control, and the skid indicator light comes on in perfectly dry weather. Cassandra is traumatized. We're still under the impression that the owner is a nice guy who made a bad hire. Cassandra calls the Mission Hill location, and lo and behold, there's an extension to reach Randy, the owner. She talks to him and tells him what's happening with the car. He says to bring it in. She says that she has President's Day off, but they're probably not open. He says, "Yes, we are. Things seem to be turning around." As soon as they open, Cassandra drives it over. They have her drive it with a young mechanic so she can point out the sound that is still there. Trying not to talk, he hears it. She leaves and walks the half-hour home to enjoy her day off. In a couple of hours, they call her to come back. Randy wants her to drive him around so he can hear the sound it's making. She walks back the half hour with rain threatening. The moment Randy gets in the car, it lets loose. Rain is pummeling the tin roof. You couldn't hear a metallic click if your life depended on it. Randy, figuratively, pats her on the head and mansplains that a Prius just makes certain sounds. She probably didn't notice it in the 2 years she's been driving one, or the other 16 years we've been driving that one. He sends her home with paperwork that describes the labor as "customer states that noise." Endless $4,000 more in unrelated recommended work. Hear it in a thunderstorm. At this point, I drive down to San Diego in my Prius, and I ask my ex to call Randy and find out what part was replaced by Jade when he didn't give her any paperwork. I want him to make it clear to Randy that Jade first sent her away without listening to her, then didn't prioritize fixing it, and then told her it was too dangerous for her to drive it home and back. My ex thinks Cassandra needs to be nicer, and this is her fault for not being friendly enough. He agrees to call if I will do something for him. Ride with Cassandra and see if I can hear the sound. In other words, he doesn't believe her either. Tersely, I say, of course, which I was planning to do anyway. He says okay and makes the call. Randy tells him to make an appointment and bring it in. Cassandra drives her sister and me around when I get there, and we all hear the sound. On Monday, I give Cassandra my Prius to go to work, and I take hers to Mission Hill. I can feel the whirring thump through the floorboards. It feels very shaky to drive, and I go under the speed limit. I explained to their customer service guy that this sound started when my daughter drove home from the $2,500 tune-up, and this is the 6th time we've tried to get it explained or fixed. He's very nice and assures me they'll do a thorough inspection. He calls later and says Randy isn't in, but he wants to look at it. Can they keep it overnight? I'm fine with that. On Tuesday, Randy calls Cassandra and tells her the ABS, anti-lock braking system, is starting to fail, which happens with old Priuses, unrelated to anything they did. Jade misdiagnosed the axles. They were perfectly fine. The ABS is a $3,000 replacement, so call him when the light goes on and schedule it. She tells him to call me. He gives me the same spiel and says the noise is unmistakable. You can feel it through the brake pedal at 0 miles per hour. I ask why, when it's so easy to feel when driving, did he have Cassandra come back and drive him around in the rain where you couldn't hear anything? He says, you could hear this in a thunderstorm. He continues, ma'am, you don't need to get upset. I say, you don't need me to get upset. My daughter's been told this is nothing, and then that it's too dangerous to drive home and back. First, there's no sound, and then you can hear it in a thunderstorm. This is the 6th day, and I'm the 4th family member trying to resolve this. He says, okay, and we sit in silence a good 2 minutes. He asks if I'm still there. I say I'm waiting for an answer. He says he didn't hear a question. Your daughter was drunk. When I pick it up, I ask for the missing paperwork from the second visit to Cass Street. Randy, who has that telltale jolliness of barely suppressed rage, says that there had been nothing wrong with the first repair and Jade hadn't needed to replace the axles again, but I'd need to get the paperwork from him. I drive over there. I find Jade in the shop yard, and he asks what it's about. I say Randy said he could print the paperwork for me from the work on my daughter's Prius. We go in the office, and I wait while he does some fumbling at the keyboard. Out of the blue, he says, just so you know, your daughter was drunk when she came to pick it up. I could smell it on her. I could see it in her eyes. She was slurring her words. I shouldn't have given her the keys. I should have called 911. I burst out laughing. I say, you mean coming from her job at a law office? Thanks, I'll put that in the Yelp review. He says, well, I'll put in that she was drunk in my review of your review. After some more keyboard fumbling, he asked, what else is going to be in your review so I'll know how to write my review? Is it because you're not getting any money back? I say I am not going to deal. I wait in silence until he gives me the paperwork. The aftermath. I drive right back to the law office and report what Jade had said. Cassandra's boss and coworkers couldn't believe he'd attempt such a bold lie, except that it fits what they'd heard about him previously. The Muslim woman who dropped her off at the shop had parked and come in to check on her because of his weird vibes. This confirmed that he would lie about anything, including work they'd done or not done. One of Cassandra's co-workers knew an auto shop with great customer service. I took it there, where they confirmed that the ABS was failing. They said that flushing the brakes is a delicate process, requiring a particular scan tool. If done incorrectly, it can push debris into the hydraulic control unit and solenoid valves, causing permanent damage. Common causes for a skid light when there's no rain or ice include damaged ABS rings or issues with the ABS control module and wiring. When replacing brake pads, if the caliper pistons are pushed back into the calipers without first opening the bleeder screws, old fluid containing rust, metal particles, or sludge from the calipers can be pushed upstream. That was their guess as to what had happened, since it had failed right after the brake replacement. I authorized the mechanic to replace the ABS. The front desk person is wonderful to deal with and even gives me a ride to where my daughter can pick me up. They get the work done in a day and drive it to make sure everything is working. However, when I drive it home, I can still hear a clicking. Not what we were hearing from the ABS, but the original sound. Disheartened, I break the news to Cassandra that the ordeal isn't over. To get a third opinion, Cassandra sets up an appointment with a female mechanic in her neighborhood. She runs a diagnosis and finds there's play in one of the axle joints, showing it wasn't fitting correctly, and also that one of the axle boots that they had just replaced was leaking. She said she'd never seen a Prius that needed the axles replaced and wondered if we could get the original ones back. She gave Cassandra the report but didn't charge her. So here's the summary of the story so far. Jade at Cass Street Automotive charged $2,500 for new brakes and axles and returned a car with a new clicking sound, brakes that gave out on hills, control that was lost on curves, a skid indicator light that went on for no reason, and an anti-lock brake system that failed while still in the process of trying to resolve the clicking sound. He wouldn't look at the car when my daughter had a day off, forcing her to bring it in on a workday, then telling her she had to leave it overnight because it was too dangerous to drive home and bring back the next morning. Despite having created this dangerous condition and ignoring her attempts over the phone and in person, he gave no apology, much less consideration for her inconvenience. Jade has such a low opinion of women that he thinks he can tell a mom her daughter was drunk, and she will believe him instead of the daughter she's known all her life. This was seriously unethical behavior and strangely unhinged. Knowing that he would lie for no reason calls into question everything else. Did the boots and axles even need replacing? Did they replace them the second time or just keep the car out of pure malice? Did he think Cassandra wouldn't know the difference since the sound was only in her head? The owner, Randy, doesn't think anyone who works for him is competent. According to him, Jade didn't need to replace the axles a second time for a sound that didn't exist. His mechanic who drove with Cassandra and heard the sound couldn't be believed, so Cassandra had to come back and drive Randy, who heard nothing. The Mission Hill office manager, who promised they would do a thorough inspection, was just told to keep it until Randy was back the next day. Randy gaslit Cassandra, telling her she didn't know how a Prius sounds, then gaslit me, saying you could hear the sound in a thunderstorm, but it was unrelated to the one we'd spent 6 visits trying to resolve. This may be true if both the work replacing the brakes and replacing the axle boots was faulty. The brake replacement caused the sudden failure of the ABS, and the axle replacement isn't secure and is causing leakage in a brand new boot. Most of all, Jade was malicious and demeaning in response to Cassandra's complaints. He was rude to Cassandra's sister and her concerned coworker. To me, he tried to poison my relationship with Cassandra to deflect from his own negligence and harsh treatment. Randy was dismissive of Cassandra and of me, with his only response being $7,000 more of work, with no apology or culpability. Telescoping to the end. 2 months later, Cassandra still hears the clicking that makes her nervous to drive. Her job is now hybrid, so she doesn't commute, which is a relief. I'm driving to San Diego anyway, so I set up an appointment with the repair shop who replaced the ABS. When I take it in, their Prius expert drives it and definitely hears the sound. He pinpoints it at the right front axle, but says they'll need to put it on the rack and disassemble the boot to figure out what's going on. I give approval for the expense. At this point, I just need to know for my own closure. Their front desk calls me and said they didn't need to do any disassembly. When they put it on the rack, the axle telescoped right out of the transmission. It happened so fast, they didn't even catch it on camera. If it had happened while Cassandra was driving on the freeway, it could have been fatal. They replaced the axle with my approval and gratitude and saved the replaced one as evidence. So the noise that she had been trying to draw their attention to was an unsecured axle with play in it, as the second mechanic said, ready to telescope out. Did Jade replace the axles but not lock it a second time? That seems unlikely, but will be up to them to explain. According to Randy, the owner, he didn't even need to do that. So the culpability goes to the top. I'll be starting my process with a complaint to the Bureau of Automotive Repairs. If Cassandra had been more easily intimidated out of her own experience, if she hadn't had parents with resources and tenacity, this could have ended tragically. If they treat men this way, they wouldn't have Best of San Diego with a 4.2 rating, although the top reviews are over a decade old. If our ordeal is indicative, they take advantage of women who can be intimidated because they don't understand car mechanics. Most women won't complain, and the few who do can be made to think it's their fault or will cost them big to get it fixed. A man hearing a new sound on the way back from the repair shop is an attentive owner. For a woman, it's in her head, psychosomatic, hysterical, irrational, probably looking for attention, maybe trying to get money, or perhaps just drunk. For more information on how an incorrect brake flush can lead to ABS failure, I have that posted at thirdparadigm.substack.com. But for a couple of amusing episodes on toxic masculinity, here is Zoomer Girl Derangement, and this is Disagreeable Women. Thank you for watching.